bloated reputation of Stephen Morrison, the dad, the famously overrated artist. On top of that, he was supposed to make sure, at the very least, that she agreed to grant Culture exclusive rights to reproduce a drawing Morrison had made of her, a drawing never previously published and not even seen by anyone at Culture, but which, due to the fear that a rival publication might get hold of it, had acquired the status of a rare and valuable artifact. The value of any individual part of this arrangement was irrelevant. What mattered was that in marketing and publicity terms, or from an editorial point of view, circulation and advertising, the planets were all in alignment. He had to interview her, had to come away with a picture, and the right to reproduce it. Christ almighty. A woman pushing an all-terrain pram glanced quickly at him and looked away even more quickly. He must have been doing that thing. Not talking aloud to himself, but forming words with his mouth, unconsciously lip-syncing the torrent of grievances that tumbled constantly through his head. He held his mouth firmly shut. He had to stop doing that. Of all the things he had to stop doing, or start doing, that was right at the top of the list. But how do you stop doing something when you are completely unaware that you're doing it? Charlotte was the one who pointed it out to him when they were still together, but he'd probably been doing it for years before that. Towards the end, that's how she would refer to this habit of muted karaoke. "That thing," she would say. "You're doing that thing again." At first it had been a joke between them. Then, like everything else in a marriage, it stopped being a joke and became a bone of contention, an issue, a source of resentment, one of the many things that rendered life on planet Jeff, as she termed the uninhabitable wasteland of their marriage, intolerable. What she never understood, he claimed, was that life on planet Jeff was intolerable for him too, more so, in fact, than for anyone else. That, she claimed, was precisely her point. These days he had no one to alert him to the fact that he was walking down the street mouthing out his thoughts. It was a very bad habit. He had to stop doing it. But it was possible that, as he was walking down the street, he was forming the words, "This is a very bad habit, I must stop doing it." It's even possible that as I walk down the street, I am forming these words. He glued his mouth closed again, as a way of closing off this line of thought. The only way to stop this habit of forming the words with his lips was to stop forming the words in his brain, to stop having the thoughts that formed the words. How to do that? It was a major undertaking, the kind of thing you got sorted out in an ashram, not cosmetically at a beautician's. Eventually, everything that is going on inside will manifest itself externally. The interior will be exteriorized. He made an effort to smile. If he could get into the habit of doing this constantly, so that his face looked cheerful in repose, then the exterior might be interiorized. He might start to beam internally. Except it was so tiring, keeping smiling like that. The moment he stopped concentrating on smiling, his face lapsed back into its unbeaming norm. Norm was certainly the operative word. Most of the people passing by looked miserable as a disappointing sin. Many of them, if their faces were anything to go by, looked like their souls were scowling. Maybe Alex Ferguson was right. Maybe chewing gum ferociously was the only answer. If so, the solution was at hand, in the form of a newsagent's. Behind the counter was a young Indian girl. How old? 17, 18? Gorgeous, though, and with a bright smile. Unusual in her line of work. Maybe she was just starting out, taking time off from her A-levels or whatever they were called these days, filling in for her surly father who, though he spoke little English, had so thoroughly adjusted to British life that he looked every bit as pissed off as someone whose ancestors had come over with the Normans. Atman was always taken aback by his exchanges with this guy, by the way that, brief though they were, they managed to sap any sense of well-being he'd had on entering the premises. It was difficult to repress the habit of saying please and thank you, but as a reprisal, a protest at the guy's refusal to abide by the basic courtesies, Jeff always picked up whatever he was buying, the paper, a bar of chocolate, and handed over the money silently. Not at all like that today, though.